My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Ellen Eggers. We're doing a video interview with Charles Krejci. This will be part 2. This interview will be covering these 47 years in the banking industry in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Charlie, what was your first job in Cedar Rapids?
My first job was in a little bohemian restaurant at the east end of Bridge of the Lions now, was 16th Avenue Bridge. And I was there right after I got out of high school. And we served food there and sold a lot of tobacco, pipe and cigarettes and cigars and snuff and you name it. And we had a very, very good cook that did all the cooking there. I had opened the place at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then she'd come in about 7, and she'd make a big pan of soup, and she'd make homemade bread, and she'd make homemade pies. And then we would serve lunch at noon with the people from, at that time, was Sinclair Packing Company, and I forget how many thousand they had working for them then, and they'd come running because we could only handle about 25 of them. So she would give them a big gob of mashed potatoes and gravy and a nice chunk of meat, and probably either beans or corn or something, and homemade bread and coffee and a piece of pie, all for a quarter. And of course, those days you had prohibition; you couldn't sell liquor, but we also had a steam table where we could make sandwiches for the people. And I often wondered how the boss ever made money, and he was sick, real sick man. He'd come down at 2 o'clock, then I could leave after that. But it was quite an experience, and all kinds of people.
Yeah. How old were you at this time?
17.
17 years old?
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned it was at the foot of the, what bridge? Alliance? Did you call it Alliance
Bridge?
Well,
back then it was the end of 16th Avenue Bridge, mm-hmm. But it's the Bridge of Lions now, thanks to me.
Oh, the Bridge of Lions.
Thanks to me wanting to put the lions up there.
Did you have something to do with
that?
Yeah, did you really?
I thought the bridge in Czechoslovakia has all kinds of beautiful statues all over it. No, this plain old bridge, and it was supposed to be kind of taken after that bridge, not complete, but kind of. And I said, well, they have something there. So I put it before the board. First I went to the guy that plans all this stuff and told him. He says, yeah, that'd be all right if you can do it. So I talked to the contractor. They were still working on it. He says, yeah, we can do that. It happened to fit right in. So we got the big lions at the end and the little lions at the... And once you have it, not long after we had it, somebody took one of those lions and broke it all up and took a flag and broke it all up, so we quit putting the flags up there. And I still would like to have a big life-size lion in front of the museum, but I can't convince them. Mm-hmm. There again, the fellow that contracted said, I don't want any concrete lions there. If I want anything, I want bronze. I said, yeah, 20,000 a throw. We're not going to put bronze ones. But it needs something. There's nothing inviting about it, just plain, I think something like that, you look again. And, of course, a lot of people on the island are putting lions in front of their businesses and all. Yeah. So that's where that was.
Good. Nice story. Charlie, when the owner died of this establishment, what did you do then?
Well, then, of course, I was worried what I was going to do because times were hard. That was right at the beginning of Depression coming in. I knew it would be a hard time finding a job. But for some reason or other, I got a telephone call from People's Bank, from Frank Welch, who was the cashier of the bank, and he said, I'd like to talk to you. I said, sure, I'll be down there. So I went down and visited with him, and he hired me. I started out the next day, and that was on November 19th, 1927.
Do you suppose somebody put in a good word for you?
I don't have any idea. I don't have any idea.
Before we leave Prohibition, I
think they probably might have, because I knew some of the guys working there and some of the people working there.
Mm-hmm. Before we get into banking, I wanted to ask you a question on prohibition. I know this establishment that you worked at was also a tavern. Not only sold food, but it was called a tavern. Why would people come to a tavern if they couldn't drink
Well, you
alcohol?
could get soft drinks, and then they had, well, there was an undertaker, Leshinger, that lived behind the building, and he'd come in every morning and drink a little glass of bitters, whatever that is. They had that kind of stuff, but nothing with any alcohol in them.
Did anybody try to bring their alcohol home brew from home in to drink it in?
Well, there's a lot of bootleggers around there, a lot of them. In fact, one of them would frequent the place a lot, and his brother was a very battling sort of guy, always looking for a fight, and this other fellow, we had some kind of a machine there, I don't know, it was that you put money in and get something out, and he was kind of, I suppose, a little under the weather, and he started shaking things. I went up there and stopped him. And his young brother grabbed me by the shirt here and pulled me and said, "Don't you talk to my brother that way." And he's a fighter. He loved a fight. He's an Irishman. And I was scared then that when I go home he'd get me. So I called my dad and I says, "Come and walk home with me." But he didn't do anything. But he always wanted to fight. He's a good fighter. And the other guy was just a roustabout. I don't think the other guy ever worked.
This machine you were talking about, would that have been a slot machine early days?
No, it was some kind of either candy or cigarettes or something. I forget what it was. And of course he didn't know what he was doing probably and started shaking it.
Okay, so you got hired by People's Bank
Right.
at the age of 17 or 18?
17.
17, and what was your starting wage?
$25 a month.
A month.
Not a day or a week.
And what did your job consist of?
Well, primarily, I would go. Let's say this first. I didn't have a bicycle, and I had to have a bicycle, and so my dad scrounged around and found one for me for $6. So I was ready to go to work, and but you deliver change orders, pick up deposits, deliver and pick up important papers. And you had to have the mail on the president's desk by 8 o'clock every morning, including Sunday and holidays. And then after you did that, there was lots of things to do in the bank that you could do, and I wanted to do them so I could learn more about the bank. So I helped anybody that needed help, and by the same token, I learned a lot of things.
What would have been your title? A messenger?
Messenger, yeah.
And
Bank.
you went amongst your different customers throughout Cedar Rapids?
Did I what?
You went among your different customers throughout Cedar
all
Rapids?
the buildings downtown, Merchants Bank building and Higley building and all over the city. I went as far as 17th Street and First Avenue on a bike, even in the icy storms and snows. And I'd go clear down in the southwest and clear in the northwest. There was a big grocery store up there that I used to pick up in a bakery and I don't know what all. So there's no end to it. But what used to kind of grate me, but it shouldn't. I just get back, then I get a call, just where I had been around that area. Well, get up and go out and go. And
You didn't have cell phones then?
Huh?
You didn't have cell phones then? That they
No,
couldn't
absolutely not. Our telephone was plug-in type, ring the bell.
Did you have a dress code? Did you have to dress a certain way?
No, they never said anything. It was always neat and clean, and I saw to that. I always like to be neat and clean anyway. But one of the things that disturbs me in the springtime when the snow is melting and all that, and all water every place, I don't know if I'd be going on my bike merrily along and some guy come by and just spray me with that dirty water. So I had to turn around and go back home and see if I could find some more clothes, put on and come back. But they used to gripe me, but then they couldn't help it, I suppose. But they could have went around easy instead of lickety-cut like they go today.
Did you often find yourself carrying large sums of money?
Absolutely. I am amazed that we never got robbed or picked off at all. Oh, we bet you there were some big sums of money lots of times. thousands of dollars sometimes. Well, by the time you picked up a lot of deposits, you'd have a lot of money, checks and deposits and all that. And as you went to the customer, you entered the deposit in his ticket or deposit, model deposit in his passbook, and then you take the stuff, put it in your wallet, or you had a bag for the heavy stuff.
So in that back in those years, you probably weren't really nervous or worried about hearing.
No, I didn't worry about it. No.
It's not like today.
People were so nice, not only strangers but customers. It was just a great time to live, and I'm glad I lived then. Even though times became awful tough, I'm glad I lived then. But some of those, well, for example, I had hearing only one ear. And of course that made it tough for me in business. But I had a doctor for I don't know how long. I think all he was doing was taking the money out of my folks' pocket. The doctor would look at it and just put something in it, and that was all. But it used to bother me because if I would go to a dance with a gal, my ear would run, and of course it had an odor to it. It would be embarrassing. And so, as I was going to some of these doctors, there was one of them on the 12th floor Merchants Bank building, and I was picking up his deposit, and I told him, and he said, "Let me look at it." And so he looked at it, and he gave me some stuff, and I took it for a few weeks, and it didn't get any bit different. So there was a second one up there in the Merchants Bank building, it was the same thing. No, nothing. Then finally, I don't know whether you knew Dr. Wayne Foster or not. He's a big man in Iowa City University and all that. Real nice individual. He put his arm around me and talked to me. He said, "Let me look at it." He looked at it, in 2 weeks had it stopped. And he says, "Don't go swimming ever, or you'll lose your other hearing." So I didn't go in any swimming, any pools, or anything. But he was such a lovely individual. And he had a brother in the same building. They were in the Higley building. He had a brother in the same building that was a baby doctor. But Wayne was a beautiful guy, well known, as I said, popular, because you're too young to know that. But he was very well known, very popular at the university. And I said, he put his arm around you and talked to you, and he had a whole office full of people. Well, that's the kind of people I met. Mm-hmm. I met some wonderful people. They all kind of took you under their wing like if it was their kid.
Do you suppose some of this you mentioned the fact that you always like to dress nice and stay clean. You probably made a good impression on a lot of people because you were a young person, and they probably felt that you had...
Well, I had a lot of pep back then, but I don't have it today.
When you hired on at $25 a month, were you aware that you're going to have to work 7 days a week?
I didn't care. I was so glad to have a job, and I was so glad to be in a bank. Mm-hmm. It didn't bother me one iota. And I was lots of Sundays after I'd bring the mail for the president, I'd have to wash out inkwells and put new ink in them, and put new pen points in the pens, and sharpen the pencils, and put out blotters on the desk out in the area, and things like that, things that need to be done.
You always gave them a little bit more than they expected.
That's right, but I was appreciative of that they would give me a job. It didn't bother me how much I had to be there. Well, one of the times, of course, at the end of the month, we all had to help put up bank statements. And that was a big job because all those checks had to be counted on every statement. Then you had to count the checks to see if that matched and be sure you put it in the right envelope. Well, one time it was the end of the year, end of December, and there was some problem. I don't remember what it was, and so it took us a long time to get it straightened around and get this job done. It was about midnight before I got done, and I had a date with a girl to go to the dance. She didn't like me, but nothing I could do. I figured I had to do it.
Duty comes
regardless.
First.
That's right.
Who was the president of People's Bank when you started?
John Burianic Jr.
Did he? And how long was he president after you had
started?
Well,
I think he got cancer and he was in the hospital. I used to have to take buttermilk up there to him. He was a very intelligent individual. He came here from Czechoslovakia and working for probably a nickel for this, nickel for that. Finally worked himself up into this, and then he joined with these people to start People's Savings Bank. And he was a real nice guy. He wouldn't bawl you out, especially in front of somebody. And he just hit you down nice and talk to you nice and tell you what the problem was and to correct it. But if you found a pencil on the floor or a paper clip, why, you got it. But I regret that I couldn't be exposed longer to him. Then his, that would be his nephew. He raised a boy and 2 girls. Their parents died. He raised them, and he had a home here on 3rd Street West, and he was very prominent in what's the big lodge thing here?
Masonic?
Masonic. Very prominent in that. In fact, he went all over the world on the Masonic stuff. And he could entertain 200 people and feed them in his house. But he raised these 3 kids, put them through college, bought their clothes, bought their car, and did all that for his sister that died. And so he was. That's how he got in there. But as I say, I would like to have been.
What was his nephew's name?
Erwin F. Stepanek. And the 2 girls, I'm trying to think of the name. I can't think of them. They're both gone, but one of the girls still is alive. And one of the girls is alive, by the way. We was talking about that Turchik letter. That's one of the girls that gave me that letter that Alma wrote about my dad. Mm-hmm. And I think that Mr. Biryanic intended for Bud to become president, but it got into a family affair, and there was no way. And I don't know whether I should tell this or not. No.
Well, if it's kind of touchy, don't.
I don't think I better tell you what I want to tell you. I told it to you before, but I don't want to put it in here.
When Mr. Biryanic passed away, then who became the new president?
Frank Welch. He's the guy that hired me. Then he became the president. And John gave him, I don't know how many thousand shares of stock so he could become president. And
was he connected with the family in any way, or not?
No, they're a totally different family, and they were a pretty well-known Catholic family.
Mm-hmm. Did this John Biryanic have any children?
No, he never was married.
Oh.
He had lots of women who liked to marry him, but he never. He was such a well-dressed individual. I'm telling you, he had the best styles. He had 2 cars. One of them was a Ford Roadster, yellow and black. I mean, beautiful little car. And he'd chase all around in that, but they'd take the big car when he'd go. But he traveled a lot all over the world.
At this point in time, how many banks would there have been in Cedar Rapids?
I gave you that someplace before. Oh, let's see.
Can you remember the names of these banks, Charlie?
Yes, I think I can. Cedar Rapids State Bank, Security Savings Bank, United State Bank, Cornwall Savings Bank, American Trust and Savings, Cedar Rapids Savings Bank, Iowa State Bank and Trust, Merchants National Bank, Cedar Rapids National Bank, and People's Savings Bank.
The bank you work for was People's Savings Bank, and some of these other banks have savings and trust. What was the difference between the two of them?
Well, if you had a trust department, we later became People's Bank and Trust Company, but after we started having a trust department, that's where that comes in at.
And what additional services would you have provided with the trust department?
Well, they handle estates, wills, and investments and that sort of thing, whatever. Primarily in estates and handling people's money if they want them to handle them, whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. When did you get your first promotion and what was your job title then?
I'm trying to
You were working as a messenger.
I don't know how long it took, but it's, I think I became a teller, which would have had to been probably 32 probably. I'm guessing.
Would you have got an increase in your pay at that time?
What way they did, they kept your record, of course, and at the end of the year, they'd go through them all, the board of directors go through them all, decide who gets paid and who gets fired and who don't. And then they'd give you a little bonus. And so then when I became teller, then I got married in 1933, I was getting $75 a month. Out of that, I had to find a place to live and buy clothes and buy food. It was a tough go. And at that time, Frank Welch, who was president, called me to his desk. He says, "I understand you want to get married." I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "You can't get married." I said, "Why can't I get married?" He said, "You're not making enough money. It'll come later, but you can't live on what you're going to get." So I called my wife on the phone. I said, "What are we going to do?" We had a church. We got married at Westminster Presbyterian. I had the organist and singer and all the stuff arranged, and relatives from out of town were here and all that. I said, "Well, let's go through with it." So we went ahead, and it wasn't easy, but we made it somehow. And I often told him, I said, "Well, you were eating your steaks, I was eating a hamburger, but I made it."
When you got this job, was a suit and tie, was that a requirement that you wear a suit and tie at your teller's job?
Yes, we had to have a tie and a coat.
What was your duties as a teller?
What?
What was your duties as a teller?
Well, primarily, customers come to your window and take deposits, give them change. That's primarily what you did. And of course, you had a lot of duties before and after the bank closed. Everybody had some more work to do.
Yeah.
Well, and the tellers, back then when the head teller would order money from the Federal Reserve Bank, and it would come banded all together, like the 500s and 50s, and same way with the silver, come great big canvas bags. So when we received that, all the tellers had to have part of that to check to see that all the money's in the others. And same with the silver. We had no wrapping machines back then, or counting machines either. And so they had to check all those coins and wrap them as they go when they had time. That's why we got it all wrapped. And then we knew that everything was all okay. And any time a teller wrapped any currency on, when he got a quantity that he could wrap 51s or 500 5s or 10s or 20s, he'd do it. And he had to put his initial and his number on that. So if we ever had to trace back, we could do it.
I wanted to ask you, you didn't have computers to do all this figuring for you. Everything had to be done and counted by hand. Was one of the requirements of becoming a teller good penmanship? Did that ever?
Well, they hoped for it, but it wasn't always there. You had to write legibly, as legible as you can. And after all, we had, I don't know how many thousand savings accounts, and those were all kept by hand. And that guy was a good penman.
That's why I asked the question.
Charlie Smirchek, and he was a terrific penman. I can just see him going through, and he's good at figures, and they have to do that all by hand. Yeah, there was nothing. In fact, I think we had only one little rickety typewriter that wouldn't amount to much. Everything else, even the cashier's checks and all that stuff's made out by hand.
When you, during this time period that you were a teller, the Depression probably hit. Can you tell us about the Depression?
Yeah, it come gradually, and all of a sudden, boom. And for some reason or other, I was over town I'm trying to think if I was teller already then. I must have been. But anyway, the started to be run on banks. And I was over town one day and heard the Iowa State Bank closed. And I said, well, that can't happen. The bank can't close, all the money they got and everything. And I come back to our bank and they said, yeah, it closed. And a little, one by one, they all closed, except us and Merchants National. And our president told us, he says, don't worry about it. Give them the money. We'll be all right. We'll still be in business after we pay all what other people want. And it gave me a good feeling, you know, but it broke your heart to see those long lines that every teller went to clear across the lobby waiting to get their money out. But we had one good customer, well, I won't say one good customer, a good customer, I should say, who would come in the bank. He had one of those long passbooks. He had his deposit, and he'd come to the bank, wave it. He said, where can I put this money in this good bank? He'd yell it loud. A lot of people turned and looked, and some of them got out of the line and left. And I thought that was nice of him. He was in the sheet metal business, and he and his brother started the Maid-Rite sandwich shops years ago. But some would go out and count their money and come bring it back in, put it back in.
After the shakeout, after the Depression, did a lot of these banks that had been in existence, did they go out of business, or did they merge with other ones? Or?
I got to mention this, that President Roosevelt, being there was getting more money in closings, and some that could still exist, passed a law that every bank had to close for 10 days. So we give you a chance to do all your filing and catch up on your stuff and everything after 10 days. Well, then you could. And he did that to help the banks as much as he could.
Well, it also helped the public to kind of quiet down.
Right. Oh well, a lot of those banks, they all existed afterwards. Yeah, they all. Well, I don't know. I don't know whether I don't know for sure. There's some of them didn't open, and some of them did reopen. Of course, then Cedar Rapids National was absorbed by Merchants National, so that ended them. And Corn Belt Bank, I think that was the end of them. And well, sure, the other one had to close too because it became First Trust after, a guy from Minneapolis owned the bank. He owned the Minnesota Twins and had banks in I don't know how many states around here, and he owned that bank, and it became First Trust. And Cedar Rapids Savings, that continued. American Trust didn't open, and American Trust had all this school savings. We had school savings where on certain days kids could bring their money, and they had a person come from American Trust would handle it and take the deposit. It was quite a deal, and a lot of kids saved money. And they also had Morris Plan, and that all developed into trouble.
So what was your next promotion after a teller?
Then I became an auditor.
Did you? Is there such a job as a head teller?
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, I was head teller first. So that's right, head teller. He's the one that would keep the money. He had a safe in his booth with nails on it. He can also put a time on it in case it got robbed. And then if you needed money, well, you get it from him, and he'd charge your booth with it, and he'd mark his that he gave that money away. And he was responsible to buy all the money we needed, and responsible making up the deposits of money we was sending back. Those days, they used to pick out the dirty money and the torn money and all that stuff and send it into the Federal Reserve Bank, and they would shred it, and some of it they would burn, and when they shred it, they'd make mix it with water or something. They made all kinds of statues and things out of it and sold them. And they would tell you how many $1 million was in that. Yeah. But now they won't even accept. I don't know what the banks are doing with that dirty and torn money. They won't accept it anymore. So I don't know. But anyway, then he'd have to order the money and have to deposit the money and all that.
How many tellers were you in charge of at this time?
Well, there'd be the 7.
7 tellers? And you had to make sure that they always had something to do and they were supplied with enough money?
We have to kind of keep tab if problems came up. And as an auditor, you'd walk in sometime and tell the teller to just sit down a while, I'm going to check your booth. And unknown to them. And we did it spasmodically. Nobody knew when they was going to be checked.
Pulling a surprise audit.
Yeah.
Were the tellers, when they, I imagine there's times throughout the day when they'd be light on work, would they take it upon themselves to say, I'm a little light on work, would you like me to do something else? Or would they have a tendency to just stand there and look important?
Well, some of them would help and some of them waited to ask them. But I was eager to help so I could learn something new.
How about, how much money did any one teller have in his at his booth at anyone? Was there a maximum or?
Well, there's no
month
maximum.
or
We
minimum
try
they
to
had to
keep
keep?
it. We try to keep it at a minimum because they could always get more if they needed it. Well, that'd be rough for me to tell you how much. Be thousands of dollars, of course.
Did they? Did you have any alarm system for the tellers?
Each teller window had a ADT button right below his window, and they step on it, then they'd ring out the police department. And of course, before they got used to it, we had the police department out there quite often. And even sometime when a roll of coins would fall, the darn thing would fall right on that. Couldn't fall beside it, had to fall on that. And there comes the police and all the doors, their guns drawn and coming in, but they were happy there was no burglar there or no robber there. But we would check that with them every morning, but we were on the phone so they knew that we were all right and checking to be sure that the alarm worked.
How did the teller keep from stepping on that accidentally?
Well, you just had to know it was there. It was right there at your feet. But it stood about, it was about that square, about that high, and it had a button about that big on top of it. It took quite a pressure to put that down, but it would happen, yeah.
So if somebody with a bad intention did come in and said, hand me your money, he knew where it was, he could just lift his foot and come down on the button.
Exactly.
Did you ever have a robbery at People's Bank?
No.
Never had.
Of course, later on we had cameras too besides the buttons. In later years, the banks all had them.
Explain your vault system. Did you have a large vault?
Yeah, we had a large vault and a smaller vault. The smaller vault held all the books and records and stuff that you needed for the day's business. But the large vault, that door weighed 25 tons, and you could pull it with your finger. It was so well hinged.
Balanced.
And it had 2 dials on it, and inside on the back door were 2 clocks. And one of the officers at the end of the day, it was his job to set those time clocks for the right time for the next day. And if he did it over, well, it was closed so that thing could open. And then another person would double check to be sure that he got the right hours. And of course, weekends you had to have long hours, and holidays you had to have long hours. And then either one of the dials or either one of the clocks would open it. But the book vault didn't have any dials on, or didn't have any clocks on, but it was as good a vault as a lot of banks had just for their main stuff.
Did the big one ever get closed accidentally?
No, when it's shut, you can't pull it out.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you're not yet, and they don't lock till you spin the dials. See.
Okay.
So you spin the dials and boy, great big things like that go in behind all great big, but that thing is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work that they did on it. It still is beautiful today as the day they put it in.
They have the same vault then
Yeah,
that they had
it's
then?
beautiful.
Okay.
Then inside that were all the safe deposit boxes, of course, that you rent out to the customers, and they were all numbered. And the customer would get a key, get 2 keys, and it would take, in order for the customer to get in there, he had to go to the vault custodian and sign a slip, and then the custodian would check in that tray of all stuff to see that was authorized and see if it if it was synchronized what's in there. Then you go in there, it took the customer's key and the vault customer's master key. Either key alone would not open it. Then inside that we had a huge cage that had a lot of smaller vaults. They probably had 2-foot doors each one of them. There's 6 of them. Each one had different things in it. And that was inside a cage. And there's where we kept the currency and the coin and bonds and that kind of stuff was kept in there. And there was a door on that, and it had a bell on it. And if anybody got in there, that bell would ring. And that was there to be sure nobody was prowling around that had no business in there. And those other vaults, they all had dials, and they were all locked, and you had to have the combinations to get into that to get the currency. And that's where that stuff was kept.
Okay, so after being a head teller, what was your next promotion?
Maybe I should tell a little more about that vault while we're on it. At the end of the day, the teller had his case of coins, then all his currency, and he had to put that away in there. And that was shut in some of these things that I mentioned, not the coins, but the cash. So they're responsible to see that, and then they always would somebody would try to double check, be sure every teller had his stuff in there. And so that would go in there and be locked. Then, of course, then in the morning, he's responsible to get his own stuff out and wait till the guy that opened the vault would open the other combination so he could get his tray of currency that was his.
Okay. Well, that brings up a question. You said every morning. Did you have was there ever a absenteeism problem at the bank where you would have people call in?
Very little. You'd have to be real sick. I hardly remember. I was one for a month. It was right after I was married. I came home about 6 o'clock and was sitting at the table ready to have my supper, and there was a salesman there trying to sell me accident insurance. And I said, well, I ought to have it, but I can't afford it. And then when I got ready to go and change my clothes, I couldn't walk. I just couldn't move. I had terrific pains, and they had to carry me to the bed. I had sciatic neuritis, and I don't want that on my worst enemy. It is a terrible pain. And even if I laid in the bed and you touched those sheets, I could feel it, and it would just make me yell almost. And I would lay there for, I don't know how long. And I had 2 doctors. They didn't know what to do with it. They weren't so well versed back then like they are today. They were just, might you say, like a country doctor back then, you might say. And they tried everything and anything, and nothing happened. They even tried some kind of injections, and it didn't do. But I'm telling you, it just made you cry. It hurt so bad. And then I was on crutches, and the bank says, "Don't worry about it. Take all the time you need, and you'll have your job back." So it took about a month. So that was the only one that I remember. Unless somebody's having a baby. Of course, I didn't have a baby, so it didn't bother me. But that's the only absenteeism. No, they were a pretty healthy bunch of people. And
Well, what I meant, a lot of times in this day and age, you have people calling in sick
no, not then.
because they got a headache or something.
Not then they didn't, but today they would.
Yeah. So
they were like me. They were probably glad they had a job.
Yes. Your next promotion was an auditor?
Was auditor, yeah.
How old would you have been at this time, Charlie?
Oh, probably 30.
You found yourself moving up quite fast, didn't you?
Not as fast as I'd like.
You must have got some awful good reviews from your boss to...
Yeah, but it was tough time, They wasn't very... what do I want to say, generous with their money. Well, they couldn't, because you had to rebuild all the stuff you had and get all the accounts you had and all that stuff.
So what was your duty as an auditor?
Well, I'd sign cashier's checks or sign CDs or important papers and answer any problem and see that everybody was doing their job in their booths. And then at times I would walk into a booth and tell them to step out, that I was going to check the booth out, and I'd have to count everything, all the money and all the coins and everything, to see if it agreed with his record. And that was done periodically, off and on. So they never knew when you were going to go. And later on, when we had a branch at Newhall and a branch at Center Point, I'd have to go out there and check them out completely, once a month at least, if not oftener. And that was primarily. Well, then you had, another thing I had to do. We had a unique system, and I can't think of the name of it. It took Bud Stepanek about a year to install that in our bank. And we could tell you every day the condition of our bank, like a lot of banks do once a year, in that kind of system. So I had to make out that sheet every day. I'd get all the stuff from everybody, their totals and stuff, and I had to make that all balanced out. That was my job to do that. And that was I kind of enjoyed that. It was what I want to say, challenging, but I liked it. See, even a teller, when he took in a cash, he had a white ticket with his booth number on it. He wrote on there how much cash. He tore one off and put it with the deposit and put the other on a spindle. That helped him balance the end of the day. And if there's a cash out, it was a pink thing in the same way, same number. So you could trace, we try to fix everything so I didn't think it would be traced no matter what. And anytime he cashed a check, he had to put his teller number on there. And same way with deposit tickets, he had to put his teller number on there so I know exactly where they come through.
There was no cliche that you would say to people, what do you got, banking hours or what?
That's a joke. Yeah, banking hours. It's almost 6 o'clock every day before I got out of there. And no, they were referring, of course, being open, so that there was no such thing as banking hours. They're longer afterwards than they were before.
With all of these responsibilities you've had at this age, did you ever feel overwhelmed or burnout? Or
yes, that's when I was auditor. It got so much stuff got left for me to do or pushed on to me to do that I was there after hours, after everybody else was gone. My eyes teared. I don't think I'm crying, they teared. I just got to the point, and of course my wife wondered what I'm doing there so long all the time. I didn't mind, but I just got to the point I just could not keep that up for very long. So it so happened I visited with the principal of Jefferson High School, and we had a long talk. He says, I would recommend that you resign. There's no use ruining your life or your health for a job. Of course, I didn't want to lose it, no way. So, okay, I made out a resignation, put it on the president's desk, and went home. And I didn't come back. And it wasn't long, the president and one of the board of directors was down there, and talked to me, and they said, well, you take whatever time off you have to take, and we'll welcome you back when you get squared away so you feel like you can. Well, then some reassignments were made after that, and instead of putting it all on one guy, I spread some of that, and that's what you had to do. So, that's the one time. I just hated to resign, because I loved the work.
What did you do with this time off? Did you just kind of go fishing and slept? And
I hardly had time to go fishing, and I loved to
reacquainted with your wife?
Yeah, well, and I belonged to a lot of organizations, and I sang in the church choir. That took me every Wednesday night. But a lot of nights I had to be gone, or we had conventions, or we had schoolings and stuff like that. So I really didn't have a lot of time to do anything else. But I liked stamp collecting and coin collecting both, and so I don't know, it went by in a hurry.
Speaking of coins, did you ever get involved with gold currency at the bank?
Oh yes, there used to be some currency that was marked gold, and you could demand gold from the Federal Reserve Bank if you wanted to. The old one, you're too young to know the big currency like that, and they were beautifully engraved. I never saw such beautiful work on those, and they said payable in gold, but there wasn't a lot around. But there was a lot of gold around, though. There was a lot of gold around until the same time that Roosevelt then at the same time President Roosevelt demanded all gold had to be turned into the government. The only people that could have gold were bona fide coin collectors. They could have only one of each type. They couldn't have a collection. And right along about that time, some farmer died, and they were cleaning out the house or the barn or wherever it was, I don't know. But anyhow, there was the old-fashioned mailbox like they have at the road with that flag on it, you know. They took it and threw it in the junk pile, and it fell open, and gold started rolling out. And they brought it in the bank. There was $20,000 worth of gold in there. And if that door hadn't opened, that was going to the dump. For that reason, I always say, and so do these guys that have antiques, don't ever throw a book away when you're checking somebody's estate or a magazine without thumbing through. A lot of people use books to keep their money in, or a magazine to keep their money, but just don't be in a hurry to get the thing solved by throwing it away. And I imagine there's lots of money that got thrown away unwittingly. That's why when the kids used to be able to go down the junkyard or down where they dump, they nose around, once in a while they'd find a can full of money. Well, that's the reason why. People never checked.
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you suppose back in those days that there was a certain percentage of people that did not trust banks and probably buried their money?
Oh yes, sure. I can tell you a customer that they were a cute couple. They're a real old cute couple, and they, in fact, well, I better not tell you the other, but I'll tell you what happened. But I won't tell you who they are or where.
No, we don't want.
But anyway, there was the Lefebvres lived in Fairfax, and they had a lot of farms, and it was a big, wealthy people, and they were having a sale for some of their land. And this man told his son to go and buy the land, and it was all being done by bidding, you know. So the kid went. He put in the first bid. He put in so high, nobody else would bid on it. And he wasn't a very smart kid. He was all right, nice enough guy. And so he got it. So he went to his truck and got a milk can and brought it out. He said, "Oh shoot, this is the wrong can." He said, "I gotta go get the right can." So he went back home, and he come back and he paid for it in cash. I forget how much he bid on that. It was just ridiculous. But there's lots of money I think is never going to be found. Because lots of people used to bury money, especially in tough times. Lots of people used to bury money. If they don't make a record of it, nobody knows. And it's...
Okay, Charlie, so your next promotion was, after an auditor, you become what?
Then I became an assistant cashier.
And what did that job consist of, your duties?
Well, it's just a little better pay. I kept on doing your work while you was doing primarily, but gave an official title. Sometimes you could sign papers as an assistant cashier and things like that.
Were you still an auditor?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Well, wait a minute. I'll back up there. I would have had been, had been, for a while. But I loved bank teller work, and I missed all my people. But I'd see them at the windows and talk to them.
Did you find each time you got promoted, it seems like you were taking on more duties?
No, I expected to. It would be different duties than you had before, because unless you're an officer, there's some of the things you couldn't do that need to be done.
We're coming up to Christmas season. Did you ever did the bank ever have Christmas parties for all the employees and give out bonuses?
We always had Christmas parties, but they didn't invite the spouses, and they gave out their bonuses then, and usually at the country club you had a good dinner. Just had a lot of fun, but it got to the point where there was a lot of liquor flowing there, and the wives of some of these guys got up in arms because they'd come home and says they're exposed to all these good-looking girls and they're boozed up, and they says it's got to quit. And I can remember the president's wife one time got up as we was talking. Different people get up and talk and say things, and we had a good time. She got up and said, "This is a hell of a party. No gifts." Everybody laughed, and I never forgot that. And she was the wife, and he stopped. No more Christmas parties. And that was the end of it. Now there'd be Christmas parties of people themselves, amongst themselves, and you'd have certain groups that were together and that sort of thing. But
so your next promotion
then was to vice president.
Assistant vice president or vice president?
Assistant. I already told you about assistant, didn't I? What I did.
Assistant cashier. Now.
Then assistant vice president.
Then assistant vice president. Yeah. And then what were your duties as the assistant vice president? Did you?
Well.
You had talked about you did a lot of troubleshooting in this job.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Anything that required an answer or a problem, or and helping customers if they needed help. Of course, I was still sitting back at the tellers at a desk when I was an auditor. That's so far back I can't remember too much about it.
Did you have a lot of contact with customers on the outside at this time, if they had financial or banking problems?
Oh yeah, sure. They'd call me. Sure, sure. And well, later on I got something else I'll tell you, but not at this point.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you was, did you encourage young people come into the bank and to save, to start small savings accounts, or somehow to save their money? Was there?
No. Did
you give out banks or anything?
Yes, we gave out banks, but the bank advertised a lot for kids, and we had all kinds of banks that would help the kids to save their money. Of course, as I mentioned before, the American Trust had that school savings plan that would get a lot of kids starting to save. But I think all kids automatically save everything, because a nickel was a lot of money back there. They're not going to be throwing it around unnecessarily.
Yeah.
But for a penny, you could go to the candy store. You get enough candy to satisfy you for a penny.
Mm-hmm. Let's stop for a moment.
All right.
And we will show some of the banks you used as promotional.
All right.
These were some of the banks that you would give out to the young people.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there was a variety. There's just a few of the many different kinds that we had. And they were always looking for banks. But most banks, when I was a kid, had that kind of an oval-shaped bank with a handle on, and they had all the different slots, and you put your money in that particular slot. That's what they all used to have, until now these advertising guys get to you and start showing this stuff, and then you buy this stuff and attract accounts that way too. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if they bought them to save money. I think they just bought them because they liked how they looked.
Was it hard for a young couple to get a loan, Charlie? Like, say they wanted to buy some furniture or something, would they come and ask for a loan? What were some of the requirements they'd have to meet?
They had to have a good reputation and gotta have a respectable job. There'd be a lot of loans during the Depression time. It's some could borrow and some couldn't borrow, and it's just like anything else.
How about mortgages? Did you deal in a lot of mortgages, home mortgages, at this time?
Well, at that time, I don't think nobody had any money. No, that was quiet for quite a while after the big crash, the stock market crash, and all that stuff.
Was there any large quantities of coins? You know how people will say pennies or something?
Oh, yes.
Come in at one time.
Yeah, sometimes they'd bring a bucket full of pennies or nickels or coins, and being we had no wrapping machine or counting machine, they'd have to leave it, and we'd give them a slip or something and tell them to come back. And we'd have to count at our leisure. But can you imagine counting a bucket full of pennies? Thousands of them. And while you're counting them, of course, you wrapped it too. But, that happened. But not real often, but once in a while, you'd get somebody with a whole slug of mixed up stuff. If it's mixed up, then you got to sort it and then count it.
Very labor intensive.
Yeah, but I was glad to get it.
The war years, Pearl Harbor. Can you remember what you were doing that day when that was a Sunday?
Let's see. Oh, we were pheasant hunting that day at my sister's farm, and we came in for lunch, and we heard that on the radio. It was radio only at that time, and of course they had so much stuff on radio, you didn't know whether to believe it or not. We didn't really pay too much attention, so we kept on. And only found out it was true. I just wilted. Just can't believe why we were asleep. Why that should happen. That should never have happened. Never. I thought the world was coming to an end now. And I thought all those ships, how are we going to fight a war? All those ships busted and sunk and people killed and all that sort of thing. But if the Americans were alert like they should have been, see, it was a Sunday, they didn't pay much attention, but if they'd listened to this one guy, he told them that they were coming. They didn't believe it, They'd have been ready and they'd have picked those off, one at a time. That'd have been a nice trap shoot.
Later on,
didn't happen.
Later on in the war, when they started using rationing stamps, did the banks get involved with the rationing?
Yes.
Distributing the stamps?
We were involved in the rationing. All these businesses, like grocers, they had to have accounts in the bank, same as you had a checking account. Account maybe for sugar, maybe account for coffee, and maybe account for whatever, oil or gasoline or tires or whatever. And they would get coupons from the consumer when they buy sugar or buy coffee or whatever it was. They have to give a coupon of the value for that particular item they bought. And then the storekeeper had a sheet where you keep pasting those on, filling up the sheet. And when that stuff was gone, this was gone. And if you had a problem, you had to go before the rationing board and present your problem. They'll either help you or won't help you. But they were very careful about gasoline because there was a lot of crooks on that stuff. And that's one thing we had of police, is those sheets that come from the filling station, to be sure that they're all legitimate. They look through all that pile of stuff every day to verify, see that it was all right. And there also was two little chips. One was blue and one was red. The red one was for buying meat, and the blue one was for buying the other things. And it was Can you imagine having all the accounts there of all the stuff? Guy deposits 2,000 pounds of sugar, and then you write a check for 500 pounds of sugar, just like you do a checking account. And we had all that free for the government, no, nothing for it. And it was a job, believe me. And you had to be real careful, because this would be guys who would cheat or buy somebody's book or something or other. But I remember one super salesman, he could sell anything to anybody. He had a big dance hall. I won't tell you what it was. He had a big dance hall, and he was in the car business. But he'd go to, cigarettes are rationed too. He'd go to Chicago. He'd come back loaded with cigarettes and women's silk hose. They weren't available. You couldn't find silk hose no place. Boy, was he a popular guy. But of course, he wasn't the only one. There's a lot of them probably doing that, see. But the government was trying awful hard to ration out that gas fairly, and tires too. You had to go for the rationing board.
I can imagine war bonds were quite a
yes,
popular.
Everybody was buying
item.
those. Yeah, that was a good way. Oh yeah, they pushed those hard. They had lots of drives.
You don't remember what the interest rate were on them?
No, I don't remember.
No. Nowadays, if people wants to save money, we have many options. We have mutual fund stocks, money markets, CDs, Ginnie Maes, bonds, you name it. What options was there for people, various options for people back then to invest their money? Was it pretty much just a savings account?
No, there was these war bonds, and there was the government bonds. There are two different bonds. And there was bonds of counties and states where they made roads and that kind of stuff. You buy those, and they had coupons. You'd cut them as they used to do and come back, and a lot of those were a very good investment, but some of them weren't, of course. But boy, then I can remember afterwards, boy, that stuff came back, no funds. But there was those possibilities, yeah. But people didn't have the money, so they didn't have to worry too much about trying to invest it.
That's true. I guess I didn't stop to think about that. Okay, your next promotion. This may have been your last position you held at the bank.
Yeah.
And you become vice president.
Right.
Plus cashier.
Yeah.
Vice president.
Cashier came later when. I guess the cashier, one head cashier job died or something other. So they wanted to know if I would take it. I said, sure, it don't bother me any.
Okay.
So I became vice president and cashier, right up to the end.
What year do you suppose this was you made vice president, Charlie?
Oh, gosh. I really couldn't tell you, to be fair and honest.
You retired in 74.
Right.
So how long did you hold the vice president position approximately then?
Well, that was the end of the road. That's as far as I could go. So, I probably was in my 60s somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where, but somewhere in that. And there were other vice presidents, but I was the top one of a bunch.
You had mentioned this is the end of the road. Could you explain that?
Yes, the bank became a family bank. The Welch family. Of course, Mr. Welch became president when John Buronic died, and John Buronic wanted him to run the bank. Figured he would do a good job, and he did do a good job. Between him and the board they had, that's why our bank was in perfect condition during the bank close that we didn't have to close. We had a good board of directors and a good president. Wasn't just throwing money around, and that's why we were in the shape we were.
Who were some of your large accounts in the area?
Collins Radio. You know, there was a trend that seemed people thought you're better in a national bank than you are in a state bank. So anybody, a lot of the business went. I can't write off Dearborn Brass was one, Econe and Sons was another.
You had mentioned the Linn County Fair that you had.
Oh yes, well when the fair was on, well, we were the ones that had to furnish them their change and their currency and carry the account for them until their. And of course that was existed only during the week that they were in existence. But we would have to. They took a lot of coins and a lot of cash out every time, and then we'd have to go back there at midnight and pick up the deposit and bring it back to the bank and lock it in the book vault. And I was always there at 12 o'clock midnight when they were supposed to close everything up, and sometimes they wasn't quite ready and you have to sit around. But the sheriff, Jim Smith, would always go with me, and he would come along with me and we'd lock it up. But he says, you'd ought to have a gun. He said, I'll give you a permit. So he gave me a permit, and I had a little 25 caliber Colt that you could stick in your vest pocket. Not that I would ever use it, but you felt better about it. But we never needed it. And then, of course, when I used to play for dances and parties and barn dances, I got some rough crowds there. And I had it, but I don't think I'd have used it. For my own protection, I wouldn't use it unless it's after me for something. But I never used it. And of course, since then, my wife has hid it, and I don't know where it's at.
You were telling me a story, Charlie, about at one time an unauthorized person tried to obtain funds for Collins Radio.
Oh yes, I was very friendly knowledgeable with Collins bosses and what have you, personal friends of theirs, and they many times had a training school for people they want to hire, and they would have that usually at the Roosevelt Hotel, and they would call me to send them some money, which they'd pay these people, whoever come, and pay them off. Well, one time, as usual, I got the call and told me how much they wanted, and I asked him what his name was. He told me, and I was ready to have it. And why I did I don't know, but I went and checked because I had a feeling that guy has no authority. So I checked the cards, and he had no authority. So I called my friend who was the treasurer of Collins at the time, but he happened to be in Texas, Dallas, Texas at the time. I called him and told him my problem. He says, well, go ahead and send it to him. It wasn't long. He called back. He said, don't you dare send it to him. So what I did, we had a detective was our protection at the bank, and I visited him, and we called the police and told him the story, and we picked up a package that would be the same size as the package that would go there, and the guy that called said, just have the messenger bring it in and take it up to the counter. So, okay, we got it all set. But people, I think the police were so anxious, they had too many police there, and the guy was smart enough to know, and he was probably in a telephone booth laughing, and they never showed that. But I'm glad that I checked that out. I don't know what it would have done to me. Of course, it's a habit that we did and things that I did for him all the time. It was not unusual, but it wouldn't have been very pleasant. Of course, our insurance had covered, but it's still the same thing. I'd hate to have that happen.
Yeah. You had an awful lot of important documents and your bank records. Was there any particular very secure place that you had a backup copy for all of this in case something would ever happen?
Well, not only all those important papers, but we photographed all the checks and all the deposits and made 2 tapes of them. One tape went to a big salt mine. I think it was in Missouri, I believe. It was a big, big salt mine. A lot of people had stuff there. And we'd send one copy there and we'd keep one copy. And if we ever had to look anything up, we had a projector that we could look it up. And that's one thing we did for our... But most important stuff was locked very carefully, and only 2 people, took 2 people to get into it at any time.
How long, Charlie, you're talking about that salt mine. How long of a period do you suppose those records are retained, or are they retained forever?
Well, I suppose until somebody tells them to destroy them. They were all from all over the country. It was sending. It was a huge salt mine, rooms and rooms and rooms, and they had all kinds of stuff in there. I assume they just kept it until somebody told them to destroy them, I would imagine. But they had lots of room there, but they was getting a lot of stuff too.
I was wondering, at what point of time do you say we need to get rid of some of this stuff? We can't.
No, we kept all those tapes. I had rows and rows of those tapes. Everything was photographed. Even all the checks were deposited that on other banks were photographed. All that stuff. So I had a photograph of everything that came in and what came in. It was there. And you had a lot of fun looking up something too.
Now, when you sit around and think back and reminisce, do you often wonder and think about how technology has changed the jobs at the bank?
Absolutely mind-boggling and amazing, the things that they've done.
Electronic banking.
And all this time now, banking is so totally different. It's just all computer. Even the tellers got so much stuff right at their hand that they don't have to move. Just poke a button and out it comes. If you want to buy a CD, they'll poke a button and out it comes already. They don't even have to move from there. They got automatic wrapping machines, automatic counting machines. They've got automatic machines that will count currency. You can put them in there and just go brrr, and it's counted them in there and doesn't make a mistake either. But all these counting machines and wrapping machines and posting machines and computers and all that, all the different stuff they got is absolutely amazing. Banking was back then. Today I wouldn't care for it at all.
Back then there was a lot of freebies that you offered your customers. Now it seems like they charge an additional fee for each service you ask for.
Additional, boy. Plus additional. They charge for everything now, and I don't care what. That's what disturbs me. And I keep saying that the banks got greedy, and all they're after is big profits and big business, and the little people are going to get pushed aside. And I am concerned about what will happen to these elderly people that want to have a savings account or even a checking account. They can't afford it. What they're going to have to do with their money, they're just going to have to keep it at home and pay cash. But it just disturbs me that they forgot about the little people that build all this for them, or they wouldn't have it either.
What do you think the future of banks is? Do you think it's bright, or do you see great change down the road?
It's going to be probably half a dozen huge corporations, and they're going to own all the banking system in the United States, probably half the world. And that's what it's going to be, and it's big, big stuff. And they're going to gradually squeeze, and they are gradually squeezing them now, the little banks, the little towns, or the banks in a big town that are still able to continue. Like we've got 2 of them here that are still continuing, but how long, nobody knows.
Yeah. You had a very interesting life. You started on the ground floor, Charlie, and you worked your way to the top as far as you go in being vice president. Which one of these jobs did you really enjoy the most?
Well, probably being vice president, and I used to help people when they had problems. Instead of say, take it to that guy, take that, I did it. And people that were going on trips, I arranged. I gave them letters from Chase National Bank, New York. If they got in trouble in New York, just go there, and they would take wonderful care of them. And I've got all kinds of letters I've got from people that I helped that way. And I even got a letter from a woman in England because I helped her one time when she was here. But I enjoyed that, and I started. We didn't used to have foreign currency, foreign coins and foreign currency. I started that. They have it now at merchants, but they don't have it at our bank now. But I started that, and it was a handy thing. And there was things that I could give them, cooperating with American Express. We gave them things, did things, and they were so appreciative. Or people that needed help when something happened, or when somebody died, or had a problem. And I enjoyed helping people and seeing them get help and get content. I miss the contact with the people. That's the thing I miss the most.
Did you ever regret not having a college education?
Yes. It would have been more rapid if I had of. But in my days, you could have went to college for $250. But $250 like $25,000 today. Couldn't go, but I wanted the worst way. And I had no money. There's no way my folks had no money. They were poor. There's no way that I could have gone, but I regret that I couldn't have gone.
When you walk in people's bank today, what is the biggest thing, the biggest change you notice?
The friendliness is gone. The greetings are gone. The atmosphere is electrical. No, even when I go in there, I don't know what I should say. I guess I can. It's not. It's the truth. But all the times I go in there, there's one gal that I like the best because she worked for us before they took over. And I go in there, you could stand there and the tellers are fixing their fingernails or on the phone or fiddling, and they don't call you over. If they call you over, they don't say good morning, how are you? When you get done, they don't say thank you or nothing. That was what we had to do. Well, we didn't have to, but we did do. And that's what brought customers in. With a friendly bank. It was friendly.
You made every customer feel important when he walked
That's
in
right.
the door.
That's right. And so here the other day I went in with a bank deposit and there was a new gal there. She called me over, she says, good morning. I almost dropped at the counter. I told her, I says, you're doing what you should have been doing, what they should have been doing here a long time ago. I says, nobody ever says thank you or never says hello or cares how you are or any problem or nothing. And I told her about that. And of course, I sometimes go down, most of the time down at 33rd Avenue to that. They've got the best bunch of people there. They don't want to go to the main bank. I said, you stay down here. They're just a jolly, happy, fun people. Gosh, it's just amazing. And I says, you go over there and you'll die on the vine.
You started this as a young man, Charlie, going into the banking business. Would there be such a opportunity for a young person today to go to a bank and get a job and start at the ground floor? Do you think they would have the same opportunity for advancement that you did?
I think the opportunity might be there, but I don't think they'd take advantage of it. They're different kind of people now, this generation.
The work ethic is different.
They're looking to big money, big jobs, but that's all going to change. A lot of these a lot of these jobs that nobody wanted to do are going to become very popular very shortly here, and because there's going to be a demand for jobs, and some of those jobs are menial jobs that a lot of people wouldn't want to do. They're going to be glad they got them, and that's going to happen.
So you retired as vice president in what year?
1974.
74. And who was president of the bank at that time?
Ted Welch, the son of the president that I worked for.
Did is dad still living?
Oh no, he died, but Frank got cancer of the throat and lost his voice, and he tried all kinds of gadgets, but you got to work with those, you know. But they were nothing. But he was a man that you could hear him all over the place. He had a good voice, and he's a good-looking guy too. He had a good voice, you know, and liked to talk. But people couldn't understand him. But it got to the point that I could understand him. I kind of washed his lips along with him talking, so I had to go with him many times. So if people couldn't understand what he's saying, I could interpret for him. And he was very good to me. He used to pick me up on Saturdays, take me to the Iowa football games, and take me out to lunch first and out to the Iowa football game. But he always left at the end of the third quarter, and that's when all the fireworks started. But I had to go, but I was glad anyhow. But he was good to me. He helped me buy my first house and was very, very helpful to me. Which the son was different.
You worked throughout your career in the banking industry with a hearing loss in one year. Mm-hmm. Did you ever feel that held you from communicating the way you'd like to with other people?
I didn't have any fear, but it would have been better if I could have had them both. Yeah. But I really didn't have any problem. Of course, it's probably a little better than it is now because it's wearing out too. But, no, I don't recall.
Did they have hearing aids back at that time when you lost your hearing?
No. I tried one now, but it drove me crazy.
So when you retired, Charlie, did you receive a proverbial gold watch or?
No, I received a organ, player organ, you know, is what they gave me. And Mary Lou that sold it, was it Mary Lou? Carmelou sold it to them, and she was there playing on it. But then I traded it in for this bigger one that I got now. I traded in because it was a smaller one. Yeah, we had a grand opening. A big party. Oh gosh, there must have been 500 people or more that came, and they even had the billboard name on it and all that stuff. It was a great thing. I just loved those people, and so many people came, and some of those women hugged me. I was all hugged out. And I still have so many people are still kind to me because I did something for them. And now with all this Asian problem, I had a lot of those kind of customers are some of my favorite customers. They're good to me. There's one of them that I recall is still alive today that still calls me on the phone and is still a nice guy, and I respect them. I liked those people. Most of them were grocers and some were businessmen, and I liked them. But they were different kind of people than we've got today.
So after you found yourself without a job to go to every morning, what did you do with your time after retirement? Did you travel anywhere?
Well, I did. We traveled a lot. My daughter worked with the airline, United Airlines, so we had free passes. So I traveled a lot.
That's great.
And then we had relatives out in the West Coast. We'd go to them, and some were down in Florida. We'd go, but I've been to Europe 2 or 3 times, and been to England. And I never had any hankering to ever go to the Asiatic countries or Japan or China. I never cared for that at all. But I didn't go fishing enough. I was going to go fishing every week when I retired, and I'm retired 12 years, and I haven't gone yet. And that fish is going to be so big by now, I'll need help to pull him in. But I love to fish. I love to go, and I've got enough fishing stuff to start a store. And we used to fish a lot. And then I raised flowers and stuff like that, and I'm trying to think, what else did we do?
You were into music, weren't you?
Huh?
Music. Music. Did you play accordion?
Yeah, I had that. Well, yeah, that's right. I did a lot of playing then, yeah. And then her people were over in Urbana and Center Point and Walker, and we'd go there quite often and get together. I can't remember what all I did back then. I don't know.
Time has gone by so fast.
I tried to keep my son busy, and he was busy. He was a stamp collector for U.S. stamps. And I didn't realize at the time, and I don't know why we didn't, he was so good with his hands. I've got 2 big things like this of stuff he did that I couldn't do myself, that he made, and stuff he did. And he's the one that's got Alzheimer's now. And keeping him busy, and we'd do things together, and then he and the neighbor kids, they always would play together with his trucks and stuff in the sand and all that stuff. Oh, it was a great time, and we had a lot of company back then, especially our church people. Especially we had something going on at the church that we could work out at home there while they come over and have lunch together and do our stuff. And we used to have our Christmas there because we had it was a big house. I hated to sell it when I got to this one, but this one was built by a friend of mine, and he made me such a good offer. I was scared to get in that deep, and I went and talked to the president. He says, "Buy it." So I bought it, and I paid it by little, and finally got it paid off. But
Well, Charlie, the Linn County Historical Center again wants to thank you very much for sharing your banking memories with us. They've been very interesting.
well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to somebody about it. It just brings back so many memories and makes me feel bubbly again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie.
Very good.